So, I'm Jared Axelrod. I have written this book about a little name, which I have copied over there. I can tell you my completely unbiased opinion that it's a heartbreaking work of staggering genius. Everyone should own it as a copy. So, that's there. But I'm not here to talk about that book. I'm here to talk about this one. This is Shining Knight by Morrison and Simone Bianchi. And it's a comic. Now, I've used graphic novel to refer to my book, and I'm referring to this as comics, and there's reasons for that, which are all very pedantic and useless. So, I'm just going to use comics from here on out to talk about everything, including my own graphic novel, which is comics. So, I love comics. I love Arthurian legends, so I am in the bag for Shining Knight as far as something that I would enjoy reading. But this is more than just a superhero comic in a suit of armor. Morrison's and Simone Bianchi's Shining Knight is a contemporary comic story that uses the medieval romance to explore modern concerns of gender through a distinctly female coming-of-age narrative. A young woman disguised as Galahad's squire, Euston is united amidst a war between Camelot and the forces of Gloriana Tenebrae, the Queen of Terror. Euston's disguise remains intact up until the story's climax, where her true gender is revealed. The story is so well done that Euston's sex comes as a surprise not just to the characters, but also to the reader. Up until that point, so I've ruined it for you, spoiled it all, you haven't read it, which you probably haven't. That's fine, you still enjoy it. Up until that point, there was no reason to believe that Euston was any different from the other knights at the Round Table. So to review the story with that knowledge allows the undercurrent of fluidity and gender identification to become apparent. The commentary on gender fluidity is further strengthened by Morrison and Bianchi's commitment telling a coming-of-age narrative that focuses on female themes. Shining Knight uses the metaphor of the Arthurian romance to play with the anxieties and fears of growing woman. Euston evokes the journey of Percival, a character whose gender fluidity has been explored previously by director Hans Jürgen Seibert's film adaptation of Wagner's Parsifal. Building upon the robust mythology of Arthurian lore, Morrison and Bianchi have created something unique with Shining Knight, an examination of women and gender through the masculine lens of the Knights of the Round Table. Like the character of Percival, who appears in the works of Francis Troyes, Sir Thomas Malory, and Alfred Lord Tennyson, Euston is a knight plagued not by physical attacks, but by crippling self-doubt and confusion. Morrison and Bianchi create a female coming-of-age story, which surviving puberty is linked to the Arthurian heroic quest. Shining Knight, with its themes of gender and a girl making her way to adulthood, was simultaneously a look backward and a step forward. Sir Justin, the Shining Knight of Arthur's Round Table, was created in 1941 by Greg Pleshold for DC Comics. Sir Justin was a perfect example of Jason Tondro's Arthurian toy box, where the Arthurian elements are wielded with great energy and fun, but with little concern for their literary pedigree. Sir Justin maintained a sporadic series of appearances in comics over the next 60 years, as well as a supporting role in the animated television series Justice League Unlimited. But this was not the Shining Knight that Morrison and Bianchi brought to life in 2006. The Shining Knight that graced the cover of the new miniseries was different from the previous interpretation. A completely new character created as part of the Seven Soldiers Victory series. Seven Soldiers was, in the words of Morrison, a purely conceptual superhero team. And it's basically me just making stuff up for some really obscure DC titles that I felt had the potential to be rethought, upgraded, updated, and charged with new energy. The new character, Sir Euston, was crackling with this new energy. Morrison was looking to evoke. Shining Knight is far from the first comic to delve into Arthurian lore, of course, or to place Arthurian comics in new context. We have Prince Valiant, the David comic strip, has appeared in newspapers since 1937. Excalibur, a spin-off of the popular X-Men series, used the tenets of the Knights of the Round Table as a rallying cry. Supernatural detective John Constantine has routinely dealt with witty, ethereal Arthur as a healthful and cryptic spirit of England within the pages of Hellblazer. In Captain Britain MI-13, Dr. Faiza Hussein, a British-born Muslim woman of Pakistani descent, is chosen to be the modern wielder of Excalibur. Camelot 3000 by Mike W. Barr and Brian Golden stands out in this path, especially in regards to gender performance. The once and future king has returned, and our need, likes, and which England has never faced an alien invasion. Camelot 3000 is steeped with the visual conventions of superhero comics. Arthur is a powerful, muscular figure with bright primary colors, evoking a medieval Superman. Morgan Le Fay and Guinevere have long legs and curvy bodies and wear much less clothing than their male counterparts. In an interesting element, the authors have reincarnated Tristan as a woman who is tortured by memories of her former life as a man. Tristan is most of the narrative not pining after Isolde, but attempting to gain her male body again. In this context, the man who stands between Tristan and Isolde's love is not King Martin, as in the legends, but Tristan's former self. By the end of the narrative, Tristan has reconciled with her female form and begun a lesbian relationship with Isolde. This element has all the hallmarks of comics reinterpretation of Arthur, putting old souls into new bodies. But it's presented as more of a titillating twist than an examination of gender performance. The nature of gender within Shining Knight invites discussion of gender performance, as Easton disguises a boy is more than her merely putting on a man's armor. Judith Butler speaks to this in Gender Trouble, writing that acts, gestures, enactment generally construed are performative, in the sense that the essence or identity that they otherwise purport to express are fabrications, manufactured to sustain the corporeal signs and other diverse needs. For example, the act of burping or belching is a biological function, where our digestive system releases excess gas, but it carries with it a strong gender performativity. In men, this act is seen as normal or even celebrated, but when women belches, it's seen as disgusting, or at least unladylike. This is despite the action having the exact same biological origins in a woman as it does in a man. Butler goes on to say that these performances are entirely circus actions and create the illusion of an interior and organizing gender core. This sort of collection of actions denies the concept of a primary and stable identity. Denise Riley concurs the body is not, for all its corporality, an originating point, nor a terminus. It is a result or an effect. Context and usage then becomes far more important than physical characteristics or biology. Comics, as a primary visual medium, are fertile ground for body exploration. According to Christina Francis, by their very nature, comics subjects the bodies of their characters into new contexts and engage in different discourses on a sometimes daily basis. Through the journey of its titular protagonist, Shining Knight illustrates the fluidity of the body and the way gender relies upon performance. The Shining Knight may be unique in its examination of gender. Comic books have a history of criticism for their presentation of women. As our cultural consumption of multimedia is primarily visual, so too is the focus of these texts on their imagery. Sherry Klein, in her examinations of representation of women in comics, states, comics and cartoons, as a part of our visual culture, are laden with both multicultural and social relevant content. And Marino also sees comics as a space for cultural expression that absorbs these society dreams and rewrites and reinterprets them. Even those casually aware of comics and their visual language can imagine the art of mainstream superhero comics we saw some earlier, with the impossibly long-legged female with humongous breasts posing provocatively with a similar stylized male with little muscles and skin. Yet despite this overwhelming visual similarity, the female depiction is much more difficult to quantify. Character behavior is far more telling than character presentation. Despite an almost uniform nature of the depiction of male and female bodies as sexualized, the performance of these characters is not necessarily one of sex. While the physical gender presentation is abundantly clear, the perception offered by superheroes, according to Pamela A. Booker, in terms of gender subjectivity, the merging of cultural categories of femininity and masculinity, is androgyny. Commonly, gender traits such as aggressiveness or passivity are not necessarily paired with masculine or feminine stories. It is not unusual for female characters to perform in masculine gendered fashion, favoring aggression and violence as problem-solving techniques. Nor is it odd for male characters to behave in maternal, sheltering ways. Comic surface representations of gender often hides a more complex conversation on the values and trends of society with respect to sex and gender. But that's for another day. Shining Knight has a much deeper goal in mind, as the entire story is a metaphorical examination of a young woman's journey through puberty. Easton begins the series for all intents and purposes as a boy, both in how she is drawn and her performative behavior. Easton does not have the superheroic muscles of the rest of the Round Table, but is able to battle scores of enemies and lift the scantily clad Olwen with both arms. Olwen returns the favor by revealing herself not to be the girl Easton knew, but a violent shape-changer. Easton must then battle a disapproving zombie mockery of King Arthur. She must fight the Queen of Terror, who, as described by Ragnall Powell in her essay on Shining Knight, a leering, scantily clad woman who would seem the ideal in feminine empowerment, as she is the ultimate ruler of her kingdom, but in reality is a corrupter and an exploiter of everyone and anyone she runs across. Trapped in our modern world, hiding her armor and her body in an oversized t-shirt and jeans, Ystin is tormented by a literal manifestation of her own guilt. She meets an older woman who wishes to help her but doesn't really understand what Ystin is going through. In the story's climax, Ystin's first love, Galahad, is turned into a perverted monster. The Queen of Terror sniffs out Ystin's administration, and Ystin's bound breasts are revealed for all to gawk at. Ystin's journey is a distinctly female page, where girlfriends turn out to be two-faced backstabbers, male friends and sex-obsessed zombies, older men dismissive, older women potentially harmful. Bodies are mutable and uncomfortable, changing others' perception of yourself despite your best efforts. Unlike Tristan in Camelot 2000, Ystin's acceptance of her body is not shown for voyeuristic value. Instead, it is a moment of true resolution between her physical body and her personality. Red am I in battle, red the ravens that follow at my heels, Ystin says of the story's resolution. The blood that covers Ystin is both from conflict and from her womb, and the conversion speaks to the unity of Ystin's self, both as a woman and a warrior. Gender performance is a strong element in Shining Knight. Until they're revealed at the end, Ystin is presented as male, and her actions follow suit. She is a knight, and she is aggressive and violent as the other members of the Round Table. When presented with Arthur's sword Caliburn, now in possession of the Queen of Terror, Ystin is told that only the pure heart can draw it from its sheath. Ystin wastes no time snatching up the sword and drawing it, shouting, "There is not one soldier in all of Avalon whose heart is less than pure." Later, after defending a homeless man on the modern streets from a gang of toughs, Ystin defies an ancient prophecy that in the age to come, women would be shameless, men strengthless, saying that not while one knight in Camelot endures. Ystin reveals a woman does not alter her rash behavior. Ystin aligns herself with the male knights, and her actions are male gender performance. This element of gender performance extends to the supporting cast as well. Gloria Friday is represented with all the marks of modern feminine performance: high-heeled shoes, a short skirt, conspicuous jewelry, long flowing hair. In this way, she's not that different from Olwen. Friday's appearance is as much a performance as Ystin, carrying a level of gender performity in her dress. As Butler states, there is a one who is prior to gender, a one who goes to the wardrobe of gender, decides with deliberation which gender it will be today. Friday's dress is a costume in more ways than one, as is later revealed to be disguised for the Queen of Terror. Helen Helligan offers a completely different mode of gender performance. She is not drawn in by the wholesale femininity of Friday. Her hair is shorter than Ystin's, but cut in feminine fashion. Helligan wears loose pants, and her only jewelry is a defiant nose piercing and a necklace with a Chinese character, which is interesting because the character changes from panel to panel, but it's basically a Chinese character that either means scholar or bachelor, depending on which one panel you're looking at. Helligan presents herself altogether a different sort of woman in performance. Her skills are not physical, they are mental. She is not a soft, healing social woman. She is not passive, nor is she passionate, fiery in her aggressiveness. She's cool-headed, creative, analytical, intuitive, and intelligent woman who gets excited and talkative about ideas. Helligan is a big-picture thinker who uses her vast knowledge to connect disparate elements. Radical goes on to say that this method of thinking is distinctly gendered. The way she describes her cognitive abilities reminds me a lot of feminine intuition, a woman's gut instinct based on 1,000 unconscious clues. It should be noted that Helligan, like Ystin, has no trouble pulling Caliburn from its scabbard, as she is also pure of heart. Both Friday and Helligan interact with the world in ways that Ystin does not, in very specific gendered ways. Of all the classical knights in King Arthur's court, Ystin finds a kindred soul in Percival, whose journey towards adulthood mirrors her own. Morrison and Bianchi have included a Peredur in their Knights of the Round Table, that's the end of the bottom. Blinded by the holy cup, yet possessed of celestial senses unknown to ordinary men. This Peredur evokes the blindness of Mallory's being king, and the metaphorical blindness of Percival that is afflicted with when he does not recognize the Grail for what it is in Kristen Troy's unfinished Percival, the story of the Grail. But it's Ystin who is much more closer aligned with Percival Chrétien, Mallory, and Tennyson. Ystin must wrestle with her own feelings of diminished self-worth, giving form in a monster called guilt. Camelot that lies screaming, Ystin, Guilt says, echoing Ystin's own thoughts, and very soon the same thing will happen here. So kill yourself, for all is lost, and it's all your fault. Tennyson's Percival has a similar battle with his own doubts. In the Holy Grail, Percival sees himself as unworthy, so it's no surprise that he makes his own self-doubt a prophecy. Like Galahad, Percival wrestles with the demands of the divine with little success. But unlike Galahad and Lancelot, he understands the sacrifices the divine requires. When Percival abandons these trappings of the perfect material life, he continues seeking the Holy Grail in Galahad. He is struggling to be the man worthy of the quest he has undertaken. Percival deals with monsters made up of his own fears, battling not outside evil, but internal doubt. Like Iston, Percival's story is a young man growing up, looking toward mighty role models, and ultimately finding his own path. I'm going to skip past Percival. And with Shining Knight, Morrison and Bianchi have created a contemporary narrative that simultaneously evokes medieval romance while exploring modern concerns of gender. Shining Knight stands apart from other Thorian comics due to its commitment to telling a female narrative, not just by having a female protagonist, but having the story echo the anxieties and fears of growing heroes and women. Ultimately, Sirius and the Shining Knight of King Arthur's Round Table breathe new life, not just a character from the golden age of comics, but in Arthurian literature itself. Shining Knight shows how those old legends can be reworked into exciting, energetic narratives that provide the same wonder for a new audience of